Sometimes my hair is just so poofy. I want it to de-poof. It is what it is. I'm going to cut these sections. They're too long. I'll cut them later. So, we can take a deep breath and center ourselves for morning prayers. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale and exhale with a low, clear tone. Ready? Inhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale and do the same thing, long clear tone, but have the tone be closer to your speaking voice. Inhale. Shema Yisrael Asher Eloheinu Yahweh Echad. ואהבת את ענת אלוהיך ובכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך וחיו הדברים האלה אשר נוחי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך וחיה כי יביאך אלוהיך אל הארץ אשר נשבע לאבותיך לאברהם ליצחק וליעקב לתת לך ערים גדולות וטובות אשר לא בנית ובתים מלאים כל טובה אשר למילאת ואורות עצובים אשר לא עזבת גרים וזיתים אשר לא נטעת והלכת ושבת הישמר לך פן תשכח את יהוה אשר הודיעך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. When Yahweh Eloheinu brings you the land that he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to assign to you. Those are some old words. And now, we're going to read some even older ones. Yay, alive. Here we are, together. I love seeing you too, Freedom. So, those words, called the Shema. Shema means listen in Hebrew. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Listen, Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad is one. All the various gods of the pantheon are actually one God. Yahweh and El are the same, right? But of course, there are earlier traditions, there are older traditions that the Judean kings who wrote down that prayer, the Judean priests who wrote down that prayer, inherited traditions from older traditions, and those older traditions had many gods. And right now, we're going to read a little bit from a very old creation myth called the Enuma Elish. right? This was the creation myth of the Empire of Babylon, but is likely far older than that empire, right? Likely dates back to ancient Sumer. But this is a translation of the Akkadian, dated to around 3,000 years ago, is this story, about the creation of the world. And I hope you will stay and listen to a page or two of it with me. With none among the gods who could be considered his equal, that generation of gods would gather together for wild revels. They proved so bothersome to Tiamat, right? So if you remember what happened in the previous page, there's a theogony, a generation, right? Apsu and Tiamat, these non-binary divine first beings, gave birth to all. It was then that the first being Apsu, who was their source, and the progenitor Tiamat, the mother who gave birth to all, intermingled their waters, producing neither field nor marsh, right? Neither opposites were created. At that time, when no divine beings had yet come to existence, there were no names to be spoken and no fates pronounced. So these gods mingled, and they created other gods who were lesser. With none among the gods who could be considered his equal, that generation of gods would gather together for wild revels. What's the line just before that? Profoundly wise and full of insight, with strength in his limbs, more infused with might than even his grandfather Anshar. Nudimmud proved to be the even greater of his forebears, even better than his grandfather Anshar, and with none among the gods who could be considered his equal, that generation of gods would gather for wild revels. There's a party. So they proved bothersome to Tiamat, the first. Their hullabaloo echoed. All this commotion proved unsettling to Tiamat's inner being, and she was bothered by all of their activity within Andurana. There was nothing Apsu could do to mitigate their carousing, but there was nothing Tiamat would say to quiet them down, and no matter how troublesome their conduct became to her, regardless of how rowdy things were, she just put up with it. This kept up until divine Apsu, the source of the mighty gods, summoned to him and spoke to his officer Mumu, saying, "Hear me, Mumu, my trusted officer who I can rely upon. Come with me, and together we will go to speak with Tiamat." Thus they went together and seated themselves before Tiamat, and they conversed with her about their children, the gods. Apsu raised his voice to be heard, speaking heartily to Tiamat. "I have been very troubled by the manner of their conduct, so that I cannot relax during the day, nor sleep well at night. Therefore I shall bring it to a halt excuse me, and get rid of them. The mother and father god can't sleep at night because their kids are being too rowdy. So Apsu says, I'm going to get rid of all of them. Then silence shall reign, and thus we might get some sleep." But as soon as Tiamat heard his words, she became incensed. Overcome with ire, she screamed intensely at her husband, but then she soothed the fury that raged within her breast. Could we permit our own offspring to be thus eradicated? Despite their troublesome ways, we ought to put up with it. So the stage is set. The father wants to kill the offspring, and the mother does not, even though they both have antagonism. And that will be enough for today. We will continue to read more tomorrow. All these gods. What are we to do with all of these gods? All their names, all their stories. What does it mean to be remembering their story, to be saying their names? I don't know. Even though I do it every day. Sometimes I don't know. I don't want to pray to my maker, no, I just want to be feeling free. Not just who I am, but the pink in golden land, and that wide, wild sky over me. Help me to the sun, hey, I'm looking everywhere. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer, and I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, we don't want to pray. Pray, and it's not much good to talk, better to walk it. Ooh, not much good to take, better to give. We are done, forgiven, and forgotten of our sins, and I promise you, my friends, all that dies will live again. So, pardon, God and Mom, what I'm saying isn't fair. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer, and I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, we we don't want to pray. Pray. I love Allah, Allah made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. Asher, Asherah made good, and Anat, Anat made bad. Eloheinu made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. I love Allah, God made, God made, God made. But I don't want to pray to my Maker. I just want to be feeling free. Not like in a book or the leaves of trees that shook from a word that means only not a thing. No, no. Pardon, God and Mom. What I'm saying isn't fair. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer. And I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, no, no, no. I don't want to pray. We don't want to pray. Pray. I love Allah, Allah made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. Asher, Asherah made good, and Anat, Anat made bad. Eloheinu made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. I love Allah, God made, God made, God made me. Good morning, Chloe. How are you doing today? So we will finish up today with a couple more prayers. We have Arati and Kaddish. Arati means light or flame in Sanskrit. And Kaddish is a prayer of mourning. Hello, Nicole. How are you? So, we've said the names of many gods today. Yahweh, El, Anat, Asherah, Tiamat, Apsu, Nimrod, right? All of these different gods. We've said all of their names. And we're going to say many more, right? Arati is a quote from the Bhagavad Gita with many, many god names. And we say all of these names in quick succession in order to remind ourselves that they're all gesturing at a reality which is underneath all of them, represented by all of them, and yet failed to be represented by all of them. Is there life after death? I love getting that question. I love getting that question. What I would say, Tina, is that all of life exists and has always existed in the shape of a tree, right? A tree shaped like this. This is one representation of it. There's another representation of it, right? There are many ways to draw this thing that exists in the world. This is a real thing. This is just a symbol, but the thing it symbolizes is real and exists out there, right? It is the tree of life. It's a pattern that all living things have always been a part of, right? For as long as there has been life, there has been the tree of life, and it is the pattern that connects all living things together, right? It is the lineage, line of ancestry that connects us all to our ultimate ancestor, Luca, right? And the tree is alive, right? I think that quite strongly. I assert that, right? That pattern, that growing, changing phylogenetic pattern is a living being, and I am a part of that living being in the same way that my cells are a part of me. Right? So what happens to my cells when they die, right? I have blood cells that are being churned out every day and they die in a few weeks. Or what happens when I clip my toenails or cut my hair or exfoliate my skin, right? What happens to those cells? Well, they die and they cease to exist. But where do I go? I stay here, right? I'm still here. I am made up of all of my living constituent parts and will continue to exist long after those parts are gone. So what happens after death? What happens when I die? Well, the tree will remain. Right? The tree will remain. That thing that I am will continue to be. So is there life after death? Yes. After my personal death, after the death of Teresa, the tree of life, which is me, which I am a part of, will continue to be. So I do believe there is life after death, in a way. So we say the names of all of these gods. Yahweh, Asherah, Ganesha, Subramanya, right? All these Indian gods that we say, that we repeat in the Arati, to me, they remind me that they're all part of the same tree, right? The tree of divinity. All of the various understandings of the divine, of the sacred, of the totality of all, of the infinite, right? Every possible way that any human being has ever come to understand that which is, right? Those patterns of those understandings takes the form of a tree, just like this one. And what we can do with our lives, what I have, broadly speaking, tried to dedicate my life to, is communing with that tree, trying to really realize that I am it. And so I say the names of many gods in order to remind myself that all of them are part of the same pattern that I am also a part of. Yeah. So, the word arati means flame in Sanskrit. Do I believe that there is a creator? Depends on what you mean by that. Do I believe that El, on his cosmic mountain palace, with a swing of his divine royal scepter, created the heavens and the earth, like some sort of superhero on top of a throne? That's an idea, right? I believe in El to the extent that I see El documented in the archaeological record, right? He's a meme. Life is its own creator, right? Definitionally. Where did life come from? Life came from life, right? I created myself. No one else made me but me. Sure, my mother made me, right? But really, my mother created the conditions in which I could emerge on my own. All right, I am not my mother. I created myself. My body grows itself, right? All life is like this. Is there a creator? We are all our own creators. And sometimes we create gods, which we imagine creating us. And it's not necessarily false, right? From some framework. There are many creators, and yet they are all the same at the root. The word arati means flame in Sanskrit. Jaya Jaya Arati Vina Vinayaka Vina Vinayaka Shri Ganesha Jaya Jaya Arati Subramanya Subramanya Kartikeya Jaya Jaya Arati Venugopala Venugopala Venuola Papa Vidura Navanita Chora Jaya Jaya Arati Venkanta Ramana Venkanta Ramana Sankata Harana Sita Rama Radhe Shama Jaya Jaya Arati Gauri Manohara Gauri Manohara Bhavani Sankara Samba Sadashiva Uma Maheshwara Jaya Jaya Arati Raja Rajeshwari Raja Rajeshwari Tripura Sundari Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Mahakali Mahashakti Jaya Jaya Arati Anjaneya Anjaneya Hanumanta Jaya Jaya Arati Dattatreya Dattatreya Trimutriya Vatara Jaya Jaya Arati Adityaya Adityaya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jaya Arati Sanistaraya Sanistaraya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jaya Arati Sankaracharya Sankaracharya Advaita Guravi Jaya Jaya Arati Sadgurunata Sadgurunata Shivananda Jaya Jaya Arati Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Jaya Jaya Arati Agastya Munaye Agastya Munaye Shirama Priyaye Jaya Jaya Arati Ayappa Samine Ayappa Samine Dharma Shastave Jaya Jaya Arati Jesus Gurave Moses Gurave Buddha Gurave Jaya Jaya Arati Muhammad Gurave Guru Nanak Gurave Samastya Gurubho Namaha Jaya Jaya Arati Venugopala Natatra Suyobati Natandrakaratam Nema Vidyobati Kutoyamakni Twameva Bantam Vanti Sarvam Tasya Pasya Samidam Vivanti Om Gange Kayamune Kaiva Govari Saraswati Narmade Siddhikarveri Hiya Namastitam Namo Namaha. Pam, I'm sorry if I missed some of your comments. I don't think I saw it. Twameva Mata Chapita Twameva Twameva Bandisha Saka Twameva Twameva Vidya Javinam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Kayena Vacha Manasindriyarva Budyat Manava Prakrite Sabhavad Karomi Adyad Mangalam Parasmahi Narayana Iti Sarmar Payami Sarvadharman Pravichayama Mikam Saranam Braja Ham Sva Sarva Papayo Mokshayami Masucha. Whatever actions I perform with my body, speech, mind, senses, my nature, my intellect, or my emotions, all these I dedicate to you. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Pizza user. Have I ever experienced something paranormal? You do hear birds chirping. It's springtime in the mountains. That feels to me like a loaded question because it requires that you and I both share the same definition of paranormal and also of experience, for that matter. Paranormal means like next to normal, aside from normal, right? So I associate the word paranormal often with the word supernatural, right? Super, above the natural. Paranormal, outside the normal, right? They have similar etymological structures. So in some ways that's asking me, like, do I think that anything exists outside of what exists, right? Like, if the natural world is all that exists, right, the natural world is all that is observable, all that is experienceable, right, all that exists in the world that we can access in some possible way, right? If we count that as the natural, then have I ever experienced anything supernatural? If all of the things that exist, the totality of everything is normal, then have I experienced anything paranormal outside of that? And under that framework, I would say no, right? I don't think that anything exists outside of what exists. I think that is a contradiction of terms, right? Have I ever experienced anything that cannot be explainable via the natural laws of science? Sure, I think I experience that every day, right? I don't think consciousness is fully explainable given the way that we know how to observe reality. So maybe to feel like a living self is paranormal, depending on how you define the framework. But I don't think that consciousness is supernatural. I don't think my experience of being a living, breathing self is by any means special or unusual. Right? Like, I have experienced an emotion that I would call God, but that's usually how I label it, right? I think God is an emotion. God is a meme, a set of ideas that can be used to solicit certain psychological states in me, right? And I don't think there's anything paranormal about that. I don't think there's anything supernatural about that, right? And I don't need God to exist in some outside of the universe in order for me to experience them, right? I can experience them inside this universe and believe that they are a fully explainable phenomena, given everything that I know to exist, right? So I think God is a social construct, or God is a state of mind. And all that is what is, right? The infinite totality of all is also God. And sometimes I experience something that feels very profound when I contemplate the infinite totality of all, when I can actually experience it rather than just wave it away as some idea, some word. Oh, infinity. Yeah, that's great. Right? Didn't feel a thing when I said that. Sometimes I can feel the emotion of infinity. And that emotion feels a lot like God. Does it exist outside of an emotional experience, outside of a cognitive state? I don't know. I don't care. I don't think it matters. Right? It is all the things, including my cognitive states, which perceive it. I'm sorry you're going through your first heartbreak, Artemis. That sounds hard. There will be more. This is not the first time you will suffer a heartbreak. Not the last time, rather. I do not have any siblings, Paula. So, y'all are asking me a lot of theology today. It's interesting. I don't know if my answers make any sense to you. I hope they're satisfying. What happens when we die? Is there a creator? Have I experienced anything supernatural, paranormal? It's an interesting train of thought. Have a nice day, Kimmy. I hope everything goes well for you. I'm gonna wrap up too. I'm gonna say Kaddish. So, the word Kaddish means holy in Hebrew. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Holy, holy, holy. And it also just means prayer. Kiddush is a prayer. If there is a God, why so much badness? Because God incorporates badness. God is badness, right? If there is a God, then God is all. If there is a God, okay, that's a meaningless phrase, right? I tend to define God as all things, right? And we can name various gods, Baal, El, Yahweh, Asherah, right? We can give them names and read stories about them, and then they're not all things. They're like particular superhero characters that we can read stories about, right? And they exist as characters in stories, right? But when you say if there is a God, you mean something else. You mean like some modern metaphysical construct. I don't know what you mean, right? So I'm going to interpret what you mean as all things, right? God is the infinite all things. So if there is an infinite of all things, why so much badness? Because badness is all. Badness is part of the all, right? Just as much as goodness, then there's badness. Like, I see no need to promise that God is benevolent and wise, right? I mean, sure, God can be benevolent and wise, but he's also stupid and cruel, right? All things. You're a cater? A carer. You cannot bear that a loving God would let kids suffer. A loving God is also a hating God, right? God doesn't have to be all loving, or even if he is all loving, he's also all hating, right? God is the unification of all things. All things in one thing. Everything that exists in the world, we unify it all together and try to experience what that is, and that's what I would call God, and that includes hate and genocide and terror and cruelty and abuse, right? God is all of those things, as well as the kindness and the benevolence, right? And if you say, well, God is not those things, anyway, the reason why I say Kaddish is in part to remind myself of that, right? That this universe, this world, it contains all that it contains, right? All the things are out there. There is joy and there is suffering. There is celebration and there is grief, right? And the difference between these emotions is not as great as you might think, right? Because at their root, they are all the same. So we say Kaddish in order to mourn, in order to recognize that, yes, indeed, there is badness in the world. And as living things that die, right, we have no choice but to experience that badness. Right? You cannot live if you do not die. You cannot be happy if you are not sad. Sometimes. They balance each other. So we say Kaddish to recognize that suffering is a part of life, an inexorable part of life. You can't get rid of it. But you can let go of what you have already lost. Right? You can let go in the mind the things we have lost outside the body. The things we're clinging to that cause us pain. We can say these words and release them. Let them be gone. Truly feel the pain associated with their loss. And that's why we say Kaddish. It's a ritual of public grief. A public way of showing solidarity for one another. Yes, I understand. Yes, we are all discontented. We are all in pain. And we mourn for that. So, if there is anything that you are mourning, anyone that you are grieving, feel free to put their names in the chat. And we will say Kaddish for them. These old, old words, which mean holiness. Yidkadav, Yidkadash, Shemei Rabbah. Bialma divrachiote viam lichmal chote. V'chayachon of yomachon of chayed kol beit Israel. Bagala bisman kari vimru. Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabbah mipa'arach li'alam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach vishtabach vitba'ar v'irmam vitnaseh. Vitadar vitalei vitalal Shemei de kudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata. Diamiran bialma vimru. Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabbah mipa'arach li'alam olmei olmaya. Yitbarach vishtabach vitba'ar v'irmam vitnaseh. Vitadar vitalei vitalal Shemei de kudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata. Diamiran bialma vimru. Amen. Yesh Lamar Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Ose Shalom V'imramav Huya Ase Shalom Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Ose Shalom V'imramav Huya Ase Shalom Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru V'imru Amen. We and all things have free will. People and the smallest things can become something better. So says the pizza lover. So I'm going to have some rice and some kale. And perhaps you'd like to join me. This has been a longer stream, because I was stretching and doing makeup. Are any of you here from the very beginning? Probably not. Probably none of you were here at the very beginning of the stream. So no one has that level of attention span. But I'm going to have some breakfast now. And it's going to be a nice time. I'll be back in 1 minute with some rice. Look at this kale. Oh my god, Katie, you're still here. Almost absolutely counts. Do you have me on in the background while you're working? Right, you work from home. Am I remembering that correctly? You told me what you did for work like a week ago. I know, I remember asking you. And it was not what I thought. It was something else. I had an assumption. The assumption was wrong, and now I've forgotten. That's no good. I should know better. You were giving me makeup tips. It was really sweet. You do work from home. You stretch and relax and start your day. Will you remind me again what you do? For money's sake? I know you've told me, and I feel a little guilty asking again. You own an entertainment company, music primarily, and a soccer company. Maybe you haven't told me. That does not sound familiar. What is it to own a soccer company? Like you own a soccer team? Aren't there rich millionaires that own soccer teams? What does it mean to own a soccer company? Like you make soccer merchandise? You're a label? What does that mean? I'm so curious now. Soccer skills coaching and instructing. For like high school students? College students? Good morning, Danny girl. How are you? Good morning, Julie. Thank you, Slimy. Slimy long snail tits. What a good name. Gosh. Do you think that there is any snail in the world that has actually conceptualized what a tit is? Like if you were to explain to the garden snail, like there's thousands of snails out in the garden. I see them every day. Sometimes I smush them. If you were to try to explain to a snail what a mammary gland is, what a woman's breast is, how would you do it? How would you explain lactation to a mollusk? 2 years old through professional. Did you play a lot of soccer? Do you play a lot of soccer? You must be very good at it. wonder that, like, if a memory, if a breast, if a tit is like so outside of the lived experience of a snail that it could never comprehend what that is, right? Then like, how could we ever comprehend what God is? Is that dumb? I don't know. You keep on asking me what God is. You, the crowd, keeps on asking me what God is, and it like, I think it's like a category error, right? Like, how can my skin cells comprehend what I am? And all they know is skin cell. How, even though my breasts have skin cells, I don't think my skin cells can comprehend that they're part of a breast. I don't know. Like, there are just certain things that we can understand because they fit within our lived experience, and certain things we can't. Um, anyway, I like your username. I think it's cute. You're a retired professional player. You played since you were 4 years old. Wow. I did not know that about you, Katie. And then tell me about the entertainment company. What does that mean? It's not like a record label. It's something else. Laura, I'm eating rice and kale. Rice and kale for breakfast. You like the chickens? Not a record label. Let me see if I can try to wrap my head around it then. Is it like a music production company? Like you do mixing and sound design for other artists? Thank you, Tiffany. I mean, it's basically oatmeal and something green. It's rice and kale. I eat stinging nettle regularly, pizza. You have DJs and sound engineering. So do you, like, cater events? Like weddings and things like that? Yeah, everyone's very nice in the chat today, Danny boy. Danny girl. You're not a boy, you're a girl. Sometimes I get confused, you know? Gender is confusing. I put some soy sauce on it. So a little bit of dressing. That is a very eclectic mix of occupations, Katie. That's really cool. I will not forget that. I will not forget what you do. That's really unique and interesting. Good morning, Erica. How are you? Danny girl, I think it is deeply unfortunate that our social system asks us to tie so much of our identity into what we do for money. Like, I can't say that I don't buy into that. And that's why I'm sitting here on TikTok, because I needed a palatable identity for myself, even if it doesn't make me any money. Right? I need to be able to say, oh, I am a filmmaker. I'm driven by that neurotically. And I wish sometimes that I could just have a simple job at T-Mobile and not worry about how that impacted my sense of self. Like, I admire people who can take jobs that don't define them. Like, I think that takes a level of non-attachment that I do not have. You're a mom, and your daughter is super cool. I do still have goats. I'll film them every once in a while. Hello from England. Thank you, Solera. There will be another dumpster diving video. I don't know how soon. Probably in a month. Just a little bit of soy sauce on the rice and kale. Hello, I hope your day goes well too. You used to love your job, now it's draining your soul. What is that phrase? I think it's a Jungian phrase. Enantiodromia. The tendency of things to become their opposites. Everything you love will become a source of pain. That is the nature of the world. So you go. Some things drain you and yet you cannot leave. I've had jobs that were so profoundly draining, but I could not leave them until they were done. It was very hard. Traumatizing even. You're putting in your 2 weeks notice tomorrow. How do you feel about that? That quote is so true, that's crazy. What quote? Enantiodromia? Tendency of things to become their opposites? Do you prevent that by keeping a balance of pleasure and work? I try. I often fail. I'm no saint. I'm a human who suffers like everyone else. Good morning, Echo. How have you been? For those of you not familiar, you should check out Mermaid Echo. Their content is really good. You should go follow Mermaid Echo. The name is in the chat. Just click on it and then hit follow. You should do it. You feel anxious about it, but you know that when you feel the way you did at work yesterday, it's time. It's the people that are draining, not the job. People suck. Hell is other people. Getting along with other people is really fucking hard. Sometimes you just want to tell them off. Tell them to figure out their own problems, get over themselves, and stop bothering me. But you still have to deal with them, even if you think that way. Rice and kale is for breakfast. What is my favorite job financial gain I've ever participated in? Oh gosh. What is my favorite thing that I've ever done for money? I don't think I'm at liberty to tell you. Pizza, you can hear there's chickens. We have chickens, we have goats, we've got geese, and cats. Goats hate the rain. They don't like it. We give them a little bit of shelter, and they manage okay. They manage okay. Well, I think that's all I have for you today. I think it is time for me to leave soon. You saw this farmer TikTok, and when it started to rain, the goats ran into their lingual. Yes, that's what goats do. When it starts to rain, they find shelter. Your ducks killed your chickens. Yeah, ducks are fucking rapists. They're terrible. They're really awful. I'm sorry that that happened. Sounds like they were upset ducks. And upset chickens. You have a great day too, Solara. Thanks for the rose echo. Yeah, I'm gonna go now. Y'all are lovely. And I will see you tomorrow. And we can do this whole thing over again. Okay. Bye.